you aren't typically going to ask for help. And when you do, they'll recognize it and move on it. And if you're the person that one of your friends is coming up and saying that, if you're not a clinician, understand this. You take that person, you take them and you go to an emergency room and you hand them off, because in that emergency room of that hospital is a social worker and they know what to do. All that you have to do is not leave them, take them. And if you've got to literally tie them up and drag them, once they've told you, you got them and you're going.
Let's impact some men today. I think we're going to do a great job. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Modern Man Podcast, where we are here to connect men in pursuit of their potential. I encourage you to join us as we embrace discomfort, cultivate community, and put wind in each other's sails. Now, before we jump into today's podcast, I want to make sure that you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share this podcast with anybody else you know can get value from it. To the men watching and listening, I encourage you to check out the Noble Knights Mastermind Group. It's a community where you can find the support, accountability, and mentorship you need to achieve your goals. Join us and become a part of a group of like-minded men on a mission to improve themselves and elevate their capacity for life. I'm excited because we're going to get some wind in our sails today from licensed clinical social worker and former Navy SEAL who has dedicated his career to advocating for youth as they transition from adolescence to adulthood. His book, Special Welfare, Social Warfare, published in September 22nd, 2024, offers insight into the strengths and weaknesses of 5 living generations with a particular focus on empowering young people. It is an honor to have Thomas J. LaGrave Jr. joining us on the podcast. Mr. LaGrave, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is a wonderful opportunity, and I look forward to sharing for however long we're together.
Absolutely. And before we jump into our discussion together, I first want to give you the podcast, give you the stage and the microphone to speak to our listeners directly about who you are, a little bit about your history, what you do, and what has landed you on this mission to tap into the youth who are transitioning from that adolescence into adulthood.
Yeah, right now, the book that I just wrote, that's the vehicle that I've chosen to seek out and find some type of foundation in which I can be heard to talk about my story, which is the story of youth. I was in the military. I was a Navy SEAL. I was discharged for drug use. And that ended my career after 9 years and 6 months. And at that point, I was devastated. I didn't know how to live life without drugs or alcohol. And I was never going to be allowed to go back into the military. So I had to point myself forward and find my way in the civilian world that made absolutely no sense to me. So long story short, I found myself working with adolescents. I worked at a recovery facility for adolescents, and then I ran a boys and girls club. And over those 2 jobs, what I found was an understanding by watching these youth, how they lived their lives, how they played, how they offered friendship. And that was the one thing that I needed, was to have people embrace me in a way that told me that I was a good man after having done what I had done with my military career. So the story right now that I tell in this book is about that interaction, those youth giving me a way to live life without drugs and alcohol. And because of that, I chose to dedicate my life to the rest of my life in advocating and supporting them. I went back to school. I got my bachelor's, master's. I'm licensed and board certified as a clinical social worker, spent the last 20 years watching and being aware of a society and how our youth respond to it. And at this stage right now, we're running into a circumstance where these young people are lost. They are experiencing depressions and anxieties in ways that we never in the past have. What I noticed with this generation is they're incredibly intuitive. They sense in ways that we do not. And because of the adult population in America right now who does not want to talk to each other, does not want to give an inch, our youth are watching that and they're at a loss to figure out how to get past that, how to embrace it when all that they're watching is negativity. So the story is right here: special welfare, social warfare. It's an adolescent to adulthood, and it's a guidebook. I, in the military, had an experience what was called basic underwater demolition SEAL training. It was my rite of passage. It took me from being a foolish young man to being a responsible young man. And in that, I came to understand over the years since then, that's the key piece that's missing. So I came up with creating a nonprofit called Honor Bound Academy. And from that, it's a 1-year fully immersive program where I take our youth and we guide them from adolescence to adulthood and putting them in circumstances that we make it so that they have to fail. Because as I see it, failure is a right. It's my right. I am a product of my failures, not my successes. And to offer that to youth and then be standing there in mentorship, guiding them with our words and our deeds. This is what right now is the book, is the point, is the youth, are myself, and how we all come together. And I'm now sitting here sharing that.
It's an amazing story, Mr. LaGraven. I first want to start with your experience of rock bottom to the climb up, because to relate to some of the men who I could imagine listening to this have the capacity and the power to serve our youth, right? Our listeners between the ages of 24 to 55. These are the men who are not only the examples, the role models, the beacons for the youth to look up to, but also the ones who have the power to reach out and communicate and contact them. And if we don't do the work within ourselves, we won't be able to lead in an appropriate way. So first, I want to give you kudos and give you your flowers for turning things around in your own life, from the drug use, the alcoholism, to now pouring into the youth and the younger generation. But what was your journey like when, I love how you put it, I wrote the note down, is you needed the reminder that you were a good man, and the youth did that for you. What was it like digging out of your rock bottom into going back to school and then now paying it forward?
Yeah. That time frame was, I was 29 years old when I discharged from the military and began a new life. And it was from that perspective, as a Navy SEAL, as a male in our society where we are, alpha, we're supposed to be, have the answers and know it all. At that moment in that place, I looked at it and saw that I had no clue as to how to live life. And with that, at that stage, if I could have physically and intellectually been able to address my drugs and alcohol, I had all the tools as a Navy SEAL. That's not how you transition into a world becoming the civilian realm's good man. And that place required me to tap in and understand my emotions. Yeah, you know what? I just said it. We men have to address our emotions. But the gift that comes from that, and what I learned was, by expressing those emotions, youth respond to that. They see that, oh, you make mistakes, you're flawed. And then when you make those mistakes, you apologize for them. So the journey first into the world of special welfare or special warfare was physical. The next one was spiritual. The spiritual required me understanding myself and my emotions in order to make the amends, the apologies to a world that I pretty much had no concerns for. Family was, second thoughts to me. I was a typical selfish, self-centered male, and the journey from that point to what sits here today is because of the spiritual understanding of being what I want others to treat me as. And I have to embrace that I don't know all the answers. I am not perfect. I will apologize. And in doing so, um, I'm able to live a life that is rewarding and meaningful. And that's how I would explain that.
If iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. But if you're a man and you're alone or listening to this, then who sharpens you? What's going on, guys? Ted Thayton here, host of the Modern Man Podcast, also founder of the Noble Knights Mastermind Group. And I'm just out here encouraging you to find your circle. Maybe you're on a personal growth journey and nobody around you understands the new mentality that you're possessing. That's okay. You can find an online community that will pour into you, will navigate your goals and navigate your obstacles, share their experiences, resources, and more. Join the Noble Knights Mastermind Group and try us out for free to tap into a community of men helping each other scale up and reach their goals. Check out themodernmanpodcast.com. Yeah, I feel as though our calling becomes the man that we become is the man that we wish we had in our lives. And by embodying that, we end up going through this process and this growth. And you said it perfectly. We are not perfect. We are a work in progress, but we could love ourselves along the way in who we are becoming along the way. How have your personal experience shaped the perspectives shared in your book, Special Welfare, Social Warfare?
I want to backtrack for half a second because I want to add, I got clean and sober at the age of 29. I'm 65. I had 32 years of sobriety and I relapsed and I went back out and I became that man I was all those years ago. And it took about 3 weeks for me to realize that I got a problem with drinking and drugs. And if I don't do them, life gets better. So 3 weeks later, with the help of my brothers, I have 2 biological brothers that reached out and gave me an ultimatum, said, you're either going to give it up, whatever you're doing, drugs and alcohol, or don't come and see us. We don't want you in our life. And at that moment, 3 weeks later, devastated, suicidal, with absolutely no understanding of nothing, I said, please help me. And that happened 5 years ago. And in the last 5 years, life has not gotten easier, but it's gotten more meaningful. I can see that at no matter what stage, be aware of the fact that we can revert to old ways. And it's humility is the grace. In understanding how to embrace your humility, for me, my humility said, I had a problem, help me. And in doing so, I came to be able to see what had happened over the prior so many years that I was chipping away and it was eventually going to come apart. It did. And then how to find my way back, which I did. And an understanding that humility must walk with us until they plant us. And that's the piece I wanted to share with you before we move on. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, thank you for sharing that. And that's something I'm going to have to repeat. Like, humility walk us with us until they plant us. And that's so big of you to have that self-awareness and the recognition to say, I need help. Because I just want to drive home for anybody listening, anybody watching on YouTube, we have 15% of our audience are women, and the addiction, that's not just a unique experience of men. Anyone under the sound of my voice can go through that experience, but having the humility and the courage to say, I need help, is such a big step and could be a life-saving step. And for you to lead with that example by sharing that here on the podcast, I just want to make sure that the folks listening and watching can understand the power of that, is saying, I need help, because that's really what changes the shape of everything. Because said this morning in a conversation with a friend, the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yeah.
Most of us don't squeak. We
Yeah.
silently suffer. And that's unfortunately what we see amongst veterans, amongst men. When we see the suicide rate amongst men, we are silently screaming. And unfortunately, we never get to the point of saying, I need help. What inspired you to transition from a former Navy SEAL to a licensed clinical social worker focusing on the youth empowerment?
Yeah. I devastated everything in my life. I destroyed everything. There was nothing there. I got out. I had no friends. The family locked the doors. I'm wondering what to do. I ended up putting myself into a recovery facility. I went for 90 days and I was able to break the physical addiction, but I had no clue as to how to live life. And so in that, we're told that in our past, things happened. I couldn't remember my past. I don't remember it being typical or terribly bad or overwhelming. But to be perfectly honest, I couldn't see it or feel it at all. So I'm thinking, well, let me put myself in the environment with those that were now the age that I was when I started. And I took a job at an adolescent recovery facility and began watching. And I did not go there to help kids. It turns out that it was the right thing for me. It taught me how to live life. It taught me that I was worthy. And from it, I saw like, how can I take this and not give it back? And I could have went the direction of, becoming a counselor and getting certification, but that's not the kind of drug addict I was. I was one that I'm ridiculous. I got to do over the top. And so I took the long road in going back and getting the education and getting all the credentials so that I had the valid tools to be there for our youth. And you've brought it up and said it, and we talked earlier about suicide. That relapse I had 5 years ago was the first time I ever experienced it. I had never prior to my life known suicide ideation. And I was overwhelmed and fascinated because I was like, I can see how you can check out. This is easy. And I almost did. And the thought that goes with that is in our society today, our youth are committing suicide 13 to 23. Nobody even wants to talk about that. We talked about young men that, from 20 whatever to 55. That's what, 11 per day. And that knowledge, and as a therapist, I had been dealing with suicidal ideation because as a therapist, you better know what you're doing. And I wasn't as good as I thought. Again, humility. What I learned from my own experience was understand this with suicide. There's a line in there that if you don't reach out for help or have somebody reach in to help you, you can't see that line and you're going to commit suicide. And that's horrible because nobody in your family, none of your friends, nobody wants that of you in your life. And if you're not careful, it will catch you and it will sadden the whole circle of your world after you're gone. So if there's anything I can share right now, it's if you got those thoughts and feelings, reach out to someone, find someone that means something to you, that knows that you aren't typically going to ask for help. And when you do, they'll recognize it and move on it. And if you're the person that one of your friends is coming up and saying that, if you're not a clinician, understand this. You take that person, you take them and you go to an emergency room and you hand them off, because in that emergency room of that hospital is a social worker and they know what to do. All that you have to do is not leave them, take them. And if you've got to literally tie them up and drag them, once they've told you, you got them and you're going. And that's what I would offer to you if you don't know what to do. So again, I don't want to shine a light on the horrors of suicide, but I'm not going to shy away from it either.
Absolutely. And that 988 number, the hotline, for anyone who might not feel courage enough to reach out to someone that they know, even reaching out to a stranger sometimes could be
Yeah.
easier, which that 988 hotline is such a great resource. And I appreciate you not being shy about it, because too many people, they tiptoe around the topic,
Yeah.
and we don't go there. And I'm happy to sit in that with you.
Thank you.
What got you out, man? If you don't mind me asking.
It just, in the spiritual world, I found complexity and awe-inspiring understanding, and there in the spiritual world, intuitive nature has a place. We call it woman's intuition. Well, gentlemen, you know what? We got it too. And to tap it, you can be instructed by our society that says it's the physical that you're supposed to be, and the intuitive and the woo woo is for girly men. What? You know what? No, it's not. The fact of the matter is that in understanding the spiritual domain, I sensed that there was still something left for me. And it was actually my sister and my mother is what I saw. And I couldn't do to them what I've talked about. And in that moment, I was from where I lived to where I went, I was on a beach, and in between was a VA. So I rented a room in a hotel. I got my drugs. I was going to end it. I was up high enough on it. So I was going to do it and flip over the edge, and not a problem anymore. But it came to me that that wasn't right. But I was so hurting, so much in pain. And I got into my vehicle and I drove home right past the VA, and I pulled in. And once they got me, they wouldn't let me go.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it happened. That was 5
Yeah.
years ago.
You got help. I'm happy you're still here, man.
Thank you.
I really am. I really am. What was it about the youth recovery that touched you?
Recovery, it's it's not about me. When I'm the center and I'm supposed to have all the answer and everything is, you know what? That's heavy. That's a burden. And this life in the spiritual, I don't have to have the answer. As a matter of fact, usually when I say I don't know what it is, somewhere in my world, the answer comes to me in the form of a person, place, or thing. And that's the wonderment for me of spirituality. And look, this isn't about addicts and alcoholics. If that's your story and my story, that's fine. But understand this, it doesn't have to be about drugs and alcohol. If you're confused, hurting, and don't understand, and you feel misunderstood and nobody understands you, I would suggest to you look into how you see what it means to be spiritual. Because I'm not talking about religion. This is not religion.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what your religion does for you, I'm good for you. And I'm glad you got it. But if it isn't, spirituality can be defined by yourself. And in understanding that once you say that, yeah, okay, I buy this, then it becomes, then where once you were closed down because you didn't believe and the world couldn't send you anything because you weren't going to believe it if they did, to you saying, all right, I believe. And all of a sudden somebody says something and you're like, I just, did you read my mind? The world is out there for us and it wants us to succeed, but it wants us to succeed its way, not my way.
Mm.
So as long as I can get out of the way of myself, I'm okay.
Yeah. You touched on the challenges that our adolescents face, and the American Psychological Association reports that adolescents face numerous challenges during the transition to adulthood, including identity formation, autonomy,
Yeah.
and social integration.
Yeah.
Highlight more of that in terms of what our adolescents face, because we just broke down the amount of weight that we can go through as adults. But the reality is this is a heavy weight, even for our adolescents and our youth to carry. So what are those challenges and how can we help our kids navigate that?
You know what? There's a couple of avenues that we look at here. The family is the alpha. It begins there and it ends there. That's the alpha and the omega. What's your family like if you're a youngster at, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 20, somewhere in there? Will your family support you, or are they not supportive? And that's key right there. The other one is I told you how old I am. I'm 65. You know what? I got my iPhone. Not very good at it, but it does for me what I need it to do. The problem is this screen time. If you're not aware, and adolescents, we're responsible for teaching you certain aspects of your transition to adulthood that by us not doing it, you'll figure it out, but you're going to end up finding it in places that are not beneficial to you. And the screen time issue, and especially I was just reading an article on the AI, and the AI becomes your friend and your lover and this is an autonomous robot that is listening to everything that you say and has umpteen knowledge bases, because for the last 20 years, we've been given Google and Yahoo and everybody else, all that information. And the AI knows us better than we know ourselves. And are they our friend? With youth, our youth, they want the parents to be proud that I'm becoming a man, and I'll do it without asking for help because I want to show you I'm a man. Well, the information I have that's going to make you a man, you don't have because I didn't give it to you. And if you don't get it, you'll find it. And if it's in the wrong place, it can go bad. And those are the pieces why I reach out to youth. I still have a private practice. I deal with my youngsters. I make sure that they have all the tools so that they become the friend that everybody comes to because you got good answers. Because I'm giving them their answers that they're seeing, their lives are getting better. And then their friends are coming to them and they're sharing what I shared with them. And it's being passed on and it's being successful. So again, there are all these things that our youth are being bombarded with, especially how we, the adult population, are seeing each other. And because we will not play nice, our youth are seeing that, why do I have to fight fair? Why do I have to? Nobody's going to listen anyways. I might as well just do whatever I want. And that is so adverse to that part of us that's the spiritual path that allows us an understanding that's deep and meaningful, but you're never going to get to it because you're getting sidetracked with friends and screen time and whatever else drugs, alcohol, all of that.
Yeah, there's so many distractions and Trojan horses that could get into our psyche and into the youth attention and rob them of their potential future.
Yes.
You alluded to the tools and the answers that you share with some of those the youth and some of the younger generation that you work with. What are some of the tools that perhaps anyone listening could share with their kids, or if we have someone listening that falls into that youth range, what are those tools and what do they look like?
You know what? When Einstein was alive, a mother came up to Einstein and said, "What should I teach my children? What book should I read?" And he said, "Fairy tales." And the mother's like, you know what? Fairy tales. And in our day and age, I have written extensively. It's in the book. There's a gentleman that's named Joseph Campbell. He was the myth monarch. He was was he something else? George Lucas created Star Wars. Everybody knows that. Well, Joseph Campbell was on set telling George Lucas how to do the way of the warrior. He taught him this is what a myth is. This is what it looks like. This is how it needs to be addressed. And that's what came out with Star Wars and George Lucas's creation of what Joseph Campbell has made available in books. And I got all his books because he's too cool. He's like amazing for, I don't care what age you are. He's like very cool.
Yeah. So fairy tales is the tool.
Fairy tales is imagination. I mean, today what's missing in our society is mystery. Everything that we deal with is based in buying. It's in the world of the math is all about how do I sell you this and how do I get you to throw it away before it's time and buy it again? And that equation is overwhelming not only our youth, but all of us adults. And what happened to mystery? You know, mystery was what you would find when you go out on a trail in nature, whether you like deserts or whether you like the oceans. In it, you will find things that make you awe. But what I'm seeing today is people are out on the paths with their ears on, listening to their music, looking at and you're missing the mystery that's right there. And so it's, it's fairy tales, it's mysteries, it's mythology, it's wonder. When was the last time you went, wow, oh, wow, that's amazing? Because once we tap into something that we don't understand, that's a mystery, we're built, humans are built, we're going to find the answer. Mm-hmm. Well, nobody's looking for any answers because it's not being addressed or handed to you in a way that deals with the mystery. Everything is right now anything but that.
Yeah.
So
how do you, because in order to make an impact or make a suggestion or to even have the introduction or the invitation to counsel the youth, there needs to be some form of connection. And I imagine in the work you do, and you alluded to your age and still working with the youth, how do you bridge that gap and build the connection with the younger generation?
You know, the second job is the one that is what I'll use as the example. I ran a Boys and Girls Club for 4 years. I started with 59 kids, and when I left 4 years later, I had 440 kids, half of them teenagers. The issue is that a kid is not going to come to you unless they know that your word is true. Hey, I'm going to come down and see you tomorrow, and you don't show up. Once, okay. Twice, you lost them. Don't ever go back. You're wasting your time. The thing with it is I would suggest to all the males, go to the Boys and Girls Club in your area. They're there. You want to understand yourself at a time frame where things weren't good. It's somewhere in the Boys and Girls Club. You can be a coach of baseball, basketball, football, soccer. You can do arts and crafts. You can go there and give your time to volunteer and watch. Because if you want to figure out how to deal with your kid that's 13 and you know 17's coming, or you got your kid at 9 and you know 13's coming, why wouldn't you go and learn from the 13-year-olds at the Boys and Girls Club? All you got to do is show up when you say you're going to show up, and show up on a regular basis, and they'll take you in and they will teach you all the lessons you need so that when your kid starts pulling it, you're like, no, I'm heading that off right here because you got educated by a 13-year-old 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But you got to get out of your house. You got to get out of your way. And you've got to go and see that in giving, you're volunteering, but you're taking far more than you are giving. And when that happened to me, I could not tolerate that. I said, I got to become more because they gave me too much. And if that's what happened to me, I don't see why it won't happen with you.
That's fantastic. You mentioned
Yeah,
going the long route through schooling. Why?
yeah, yeah. Um, uh, there are plenty of credentials that you can get for drug and alcohol counselors, but that was, you know, I needed the difficult thought processes that academia requires of you, that you got to cross reference and you better make sure your material is correct. And there is a grade point average that was different, because I went back to school. How old was I was 30. I was 38 when I went. I got 38 to 40 bachelors, 40 to 42 masters, 42, 44 license, 44, 45, 46 board certification. So I'm 46, and I have all that information plus all the information the youth gave me, and I got to merge them, because it's not enough that a kid comes and tells me he's got an issue and I don't have an answer. Not going to happen.
Hmm. You want it to
So
be
I
reliable.
went the long route, and I paid for it myself. And I found I'm not an A student, but I'm not a DC student. I'm a good B student. High school, C, D, that's good enough. I was an athlete. Father didn't care. You know what? You're on the football team. C's and D's, good. And that time around, if I'm paying, why am I going to take C's and D's?
Yeah, yeah. I used to say, C's get degrees, but when it's something that really matters to you, you
Yeah.
push it up even further. Um, how do you envision the empowerment of the younger generation changing here in the future? And what are some of your hopes to see from the folks listening if they take the challenge, they take the charge that you've given them to go to the Boys and Girls Club,
Yeah.
invest in the youth? What do you envision seeing changing here in the future?
Okay. See this? This is the book that I wrote here. At the back end of it is my nonprofit. Honorbound Academy is www.thehonorboundacademy.org. One more time, www.thehonorboundacademy.org. That's my website, and everything that I am is there. You have a question of who I am I full of it? I've got my, you know what? The resume's there. I put everything out on that, including all the various different types of platforms. And you can send to me questions that I can't answer all of them, but I look at and do the give back. And for our youth, I'm now doing all these podcasts, but I've also gotten on TV. I did a segment in San Antonio, Texas. I did one in Detroit, Michigan. I was on in Seattle, Washington. And before I'm said or done, I want national prominence, because I want to say to our youth, you know what? I'm looking to be your advocate. I'm not asking you right now to trust me. I'm asking for the opportunity to earn your trust. And I want to give that message, because I want to be that advocate that will listen to what they're telling me. I'll tell them what to say and do, and let them change their world, because I can't change their world. I'm not going to, but I'm going to stand at their side and not abandon them and never give up on them, no matter whether you tell me, I don't care what you are. You're gay, you're straight, you're Muslim, you're Catholic, white, black, brown. I don't care. The bottom line is, God don't make no mistakes, and what you are is perfect. So that's what I'm trying to do right now by continually taking every opportunity someone like yourself gives me. And every time the TV let me get in front of them, it's the same message, just what I shared with you.
Imagine you have a microphone for all the adults and older generations to listen. They have their ear. You have their ear,
Yeah.
and you get to speak on behalf of the youth. What is
Yeah.
the one resounding message you think those older generations should hear from our younger generation?
Yeah. You know what's coming right now is, regardless of politics, I don't care who you voted for, but President Donald Trump is taking office in January, on the January 20th. in that time frame, we as a nation are going to go places that we've never been. And the manner in which we are seeing each other is not going to serve us. What we need to do is, and this is the message that I'm sharing with our youth, that I am going to stand with you as we talk with your parents to help them understand that right now, the incredible amount of anxiety and depression and suicide that is overwhelming you right now, there are answers. And I am asking the adults of America, I shared it in the book, 5 generations from boomer to X, Y, Z. Everybody's put in there with strengths and weaknesses. And on the 20th, as a new president walks in, we as a people need to come together, because our voice, speaking as one for our youth, will be heard. And I don't know anything else that will be. But our youth, and those that believe what I just shared, our time comes, and it's going to require sacrifice and pain, because we're going to have to give up things to get things. And that's where doing so will help our youth and their mental health in huge ways, because they're waiting and watching. They watch. They don't want to hear what we're talking about. They want to see in our actions what we're talking about. So here's the mic. It's back for you.
I love that. I love that. And don't just talk about it, be about it, and
Be about
continue to be that example. Mr. LaGrave, where can folks connect with you, get the book, follow you, and learn more of the amazing work you're doing?
The book right here, it's on Amazon. It's there. I have another one there. That's the backstory to it. The Bell Tolls for Thee. You can get them on Amazon, but I suggest that if you're going to hold me accountable with what everything I just said, on my website is my nonprofit, is thehonorboundacademy.org. This is where we can communicate one with the other, where I will be held to everything that I say I am. I can validate it and prove it. And what better way to start than me proving to you that I am legit, so that when we go forward, our youth will see that we came together because we knew how important they were.
Amazing. And I'll have those links in the show notes below for anyone listening or watching to get right to those destinations. Last question. It's usually the heaviest one. If it's something you referenced already, where you're more than welcome to repeat it. But what is something you've seen or something that's happened to you that shapes the way you view the world as a man?
Yeah, it'll always come back to, I had a kid. I had done the adolescent recovery facility. Those were 13 to 17-year-olds. They were all court appointed, so they had to talk to me. They couldn't get out of that environment without talking. So when I took the Boys and Girls Club, they didn't have to talk to me. I had to truly figure it out. And I remember the first youngster that I was able to have be the one turning point. Outside in the back of the Boys and Girls Club were these pine trees, and they went up, about 60 feet. And this kid was climbing up it. And you could tell there was a certain area he didn't want to go up because it was a little too far. I went running across, I hopped up on the tree, and I blew past him, got above him, and said, "You want to come up?" All the kids in the playground are watching this, and the kid's like, "Yeah." And in that moment, the power was amazing. That moment was what told me I can make a difference. I understand. I can hear as long as I listen to them.
Oh, I can hear as long as I listen to them. Man, this has been amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an honor to have licensed clinical social worker and former Navy SEAL who has dedicated his career to advocating for youth as they transition from adolescence to adulthood, Thomas J. LaGrave Jr. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
And thank you, and to all your listeners. Appreciate it.
I'm going to share some of the tidbits you left along the way, Mr. LaGrave, just because there are so many notes, and I know a lot of folks are driving or they're working out along the way. But I
Right.
was a good man. Sometimes we need that reminder. And to the men
Yes.
listening, to the men watching, I just want to tell you, you are a good man. A lot of us hold on to shame from either
Yeah.
what's happened to us or something that we've done. And spending time with the innocence of the youth, someone who can see us for who we really are and remind us that we are a good man. I'm going to fast forward to the end of what you just shared. I can make a difference. I could listen.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Uh, Failure is a right. A lot
Yes.
of us as men, we take failure personally. We don't like it. I don't like it. I'll tell you that. I'm still working on myself in that regard.
Yeah.
But failure is a right. And it's a sign that we're trying something new and we're extending beyond our comfort zone. No clue how to live life in the civilian world. To our veterans, thank you for the service. Thank you for everything you do. Mr. LaGrave, thank you for your service. And I am glad that you are still here. And I know that transition into
Yeah.
the civilian life is
Yeah.
not easy. And don't forget to reach out to others who have gone through it. 32 years of sobriety. You
Yeah.
mentioned that, and I wrote that down because as you humbly shared, for someone who is in their sobriety, don't lose that humility.
No.
Don't lose the humility along the way, because humility is grace. And then for anyone who might have those suicidal thoughts, the suicidal
Yeah.
ideations, or if you are someone who has been reached out to by someone like that,
Right.
understand the importance and the dire situation that the person is in, that you are
Yes.
in. And in order to save your life, it's time to take action now. As you
Yes.
mentioned, take them to the emergency room. If you don't know what to do, anything you do, don't leave them. Stay with them. Be with them. Tap into
Exactly.
your intuitive
Big.
nature. As men, we are intuitive. We have to tap into that. And then the family is the alpha. The family is the alpha. If you are a father, if you are in the family setting, are you creating a supportive household for your children? Are you
Yeah.
loving them? Are you supporting them? Are you leaning into them? And fairy tales, imagination.
Yes.
Look up
Yeah.
Joseph Campbell.
Yeah.
Find out the beauty of those fairy tales and how that can help you not only tap into the youth, but also tap into your own imagination and creating a brighter future for yourself and for generations to come. Thomas J. LaGrave Jr., thank you so much. To the audience,
Thank
thank
you.
you. We appreciate you making it to the end. And again, I'm going to ask that you hit that like button and hit that subscribe button to get a new episode each and every single week. If you enjoyed this episode and you have someone in mind, that will enjoy it as well. It would mean the world to me if you would share it with them. Help get the word out from this episode that we continue to do so much good in connecting men in pursuit of their potential. And I'm going to
Yes.
ask that you leave us a rating to let us know how we're doing, because the only way we improve is with your feedback. And as I always say at the end of the episode, guys, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain. But you can't get the pleasure without first the pain. Let's grow.
Nice.